When I was a child, I developed a deep love for Michigan. It all began with an impromptu spring vacation to my grandparents' vacation home, and from that moment, I was captivated. The secluded cabin and the sprawling fields surrounding it provided endless opportunities for play and adventure. What wasn't there to love about that cabin? It became my sanctuary, a place where everything was breathtaking and wonderful. That is, until a few years ago in 2017. My husband and I had just tied the knot after 5 wonderful years together, and it was during our honeymoon in Michigan that my parents delivered some shocking news. They were selling us the cabin, and we had only 4 days to decide. Determined to spend our honeymoon in our new home, we left for Michigan. The familiar sound of gravel crunching under the rental car's tires woke me from an unintentional nap. My husband, Lee, whistled in amazement as he gazed at the vast acres of land. "Wow, Han, you weren't kidding. This place is something else," he marveled. I chuckled, playfully replying, "When will you learn that I'm always right?" Amidst our banter, Lee parked the car in the cabin's large driveway. As soon as the car doors unlocked, I couldn't contain my excitement. I practically sprinted up the front stairs with my suitcase in tow, urging Lee to hurry up. Our honeymoon was about to begin. Lee, ever the realist, shook his head and laughed. "Elena, I love you, but we both know you couldn't care less about our honeymoon right now. You just want to get inside and bask in the memories of your youth." I rolled my eyes, savoring the playful exchange as I took the keys from Lee's hand once he reached me. "Are you calling me old?" I teased, not a shred of seriousness in my voice as I turned the key in the lock, twisting the door handle. Dust particles danced in the air inside the cabin, cloth tarps covering the furniture. No one had been here since my grandparents passed away in 2011, even after my parents inherited the place. Despite the neglect and the need for a good dusting, the cabin was still undeniably beautiful. It felt like home. The first month of our honeymoon went smoothly, with light cleaning and plenty of relaxation. However, it was midway through our stay that our lives took a shocking turn. We found out we were expecting a child, and while it hadn't been planned, we were overjoyed. In fact, my pregnancy played a significant role in what happened next. One evening, my pregnancy cravings hit hard. I was on the couch, dozing off to the TV when the knocking started. It took me a moment to realize it wasn't coming from the TV, someone was pounding on the front door. I had always been scared of being alone in the dark, unable to pinpoint the exact reason for my fear. All I knew was that when night fell, my skin would crawl, and I'd jump at the slightest unexpected noise. That night, my body froze, and my heart pounded as I lay there, hearing the pounding on the front door. My husband, Lee, had gone out to get my cravings, and I was alone. The banging stopped briefly, and I thought it was over, but I was entirely wrong. Sharp nails started clawing at the cabin's exterior, moving toward the living room. My eyes widened as I realized my mistake. I'd forgotten to close the curtains beside the TV. As this unknown intruder drew closer, I knew they would see me through the window, and I would be able to see them. Panicking, I did what instinct dictated. I pulled my blanket over my head and curled into a protective ball. I felt like a 5-year-old again, terrified of the unknown. After a few moments of darkness, a chilling, taunting voice echoed through the window, "I see you." It was menacing, nothing like my husband's warm and loving voice. It was something else, something demonic. The fear was overwhelming, and I could hardly control my sobs. Just as I heard keys jingling at the front door, a glimmer of hope pierced the darkness. Lee was back. The intruder growled in frustration, and I removed the blanket from my face to find my husband standing at the door, looking concerned. "What are you doing, you goof?" Lee asked with a smile, but it quickly faded as he saw my tearful eyes and trembling form. Hey, it's okay. What happened? I was on the brink of sobbing with fear. There was something out there, Lee. It was telling me to let it in. I left out the detail of it, trying and failing to mimic his voice. I knew he wouldn't believe me. Lee held me tightly and reassured me, it's okay. They're gone. We'll call the police, and I'll check around in the morning. The police arrived a couple of hours later but found nothing. However, they reported deep scratch marks on the wall outside, leading straight to the living room window. Despite the horrifying experience, Lee and I decided to stay in the cabin. We made several modifications, including installing a gate at the driveway's entrance, security cameras, and acquiring firearms. Years passed with only minor incidents, like strange screeches from the woods, dead animals in the field, and a rabbit carcass left on the front porch. Then, just a month ago, something happened that made us seriously question our decision to stay. Lee and I both worked as mechanics at our friend Chris's shop. One day, he called me in for extra help, leaving Lee to take care of our two children, Charlie and James. My phone rang around 8 p.m., and I was ready for a break. I picked it up, excited to hear from Lee, but his frantic voice and the sounds of our children crying shook me to my core. "Where are you, Lenny?" "It's outside." "It's the same thing as before," Lee panicked, his voice trembling. Charlie was crying for me, and I could hear her loudly through the phone. She wanted her mama, and my heart ached. "Sweetheart, it's okay. Mama's here," I tried to reassure her. But I was miles away, unable to be there for her when she needed me most. James, our 2-year-old, took the phone, sobbing, and told me it was at the window, telling them to let it inside. I felt helpless, unable to console my children. I wanted to be there with them. I couldn't focus on anything else but getting back home. I told Lee that I was on my way, and I drove as fast as I could. My heart pounded, and my mind raced as I approached our driveway, but I needed to open the gate manually. As I reached for the gate, I felt a chilling presence in the woods, and my heart froze. I knew it was out there, watching me. But I had to open the gate, and my determination overcame my fear. I threw the car into reverse and yelled at the top of my lungs, "Screw off," as I floored it backward. My car hit something hard, and there was an echoing scream, making my skin crawl. I was only halfway on the road when I slammed on my brakes and reluctantly looked back, expecting to see the intruder. To my astonishment, there was nothing, not even a trace of blood. With the gate open, Lee and our children arrived in his truck, and we decided to head to the nearest gas station. We were all out of our cars, hugging each other tightly, our nerves on edge. That night would haunt us for a long time. As we stayed with our friends, I delved into research about what we had encountered. The descriptions I found matched a Wendigo, a skinwalker, or maybe even the rake, although that was just a creepypasta. What I was sure of was that our once beloved cabin had become a nightmarish place that would forever haunt us. I grew up in Northern California, a region often plagued by wildfires in recent years. This story takes place in the woods of Northern California, on our family property. My brothers and I decided to spend a week or two up there, away from the city, seeking some quality time together. Our relationships had been strained over the years due to the age gaps between us, and we hoped this trip would help us bond. At the time, I was 17 years old, eager to escape for a while, hang out, shoot some guns, and have some beers with my brothers. We packed up our gear, including guns, food, fishing equipment, and plenty of beer and Jameson, into my brother's lifted Chevy 1500. After grabbing lunch, we headed for our property, located up a secluded road that turned to gravel the further we ascended the mountain. At the mountain summit, we found an old helicopter pad, a curious but mysterious addition. After a 45-minute drive, we finally reached our garden, our home away from home in the midst of the woods. I loved this property because it allowed me to be one with nature, free to do whatever I pleased. All we had on the property was a relatively new cabin my brother had built and a few other buildings for cooking, bathing, storage, and the like. The first few days were fantastic, tending to the garden, having beers, and driving around on the old logging roads in the truck. On the fourth day, a visit from our neighbor, Bob, an old mountain man, changed the course of our trip. He was a rugged and private individual, and he wanted his own slice of heaven without anyone bothering him or his dogs. After meeting Bob, my eldest brother asked me to fetch our other brother so they could chat with Bob as well. I did as requested, and when we returned, Bob had a message for us. He wanted us to keep an eye out for a mountain lion, which were quite common in the area. Usually, they left people alone, but one had attacked Bob's oldest dog, Martha, and he wanted to give us a heads up. Later at dinner, we learned that we were going hunting for that mountain lion the next morning. My brother had a predator tag to fill, so we had some beers and went to bed early. Fast forward to the next morning at 3 a.m., my brothers were up and ready to go, waiting for me. After my morning routine, which included a shower, scent blocking my clothes, and grabbing my 6.5 Creedmoor, along with some coffee and a Marlboro, I was ready to set off. My brothers were seasoned outdoorsmen who had been coming to this property for a decade, so I followed their lead, picking up pointers on tracking and what to look for along the way. After about an hour of slow hiking, we reached a spring that marked the start of a small creek. It had a pool, which my brother informed me was essentially a watering hole for many animals, especially during the dry summer months. We set up 2 blinds about 200 yards away from the spring, with the breeze in our faces. It was a perfect setup for waiting patiently. With snacks and coffee in hand, we waited for the first light. As we whispered about Bob's story and our upcoming hunt, something peculiar happened. A raccoon sneaked up to the pool, but it ran off as if it were terrified of something. We found that strange, as we'd never seen a raccoon behave like that before. What happened next was even more unsettling. Something emerged from the underbrush beside the spring and made its way to the pool. We couldn't identify the creature. It appeared to be a wolf, but its head was disproportionately oversized and square, resembling a massive pit bull. Its rear legs were hoofed like those of a deer. We watched in awe, but our fascination quickly turned to fear when the creature suddenly locked eyes with us. My brother, armed with a .30-06 rifle, shouldered his weapon in seconds, but didn't fire. This creature knew exactly where we were, and we couldn't figure out how. We had made no noise since it appeared, and we were upwind, which should have made it impossible for the creature to sense us. Everything had seemed perfect until that point. Its mouth was open, emitting a high-pitched squealing noise, similar to scratching on styrofoam. Panic began to set in, and I shouldered my Creedmoor, ready to shoot. My brothers had done the same, but I was too terrified to notice. Before any of us could pull the trigger, the creature let out a shriek like a broken siren and darted back into the woods. It left us stunned and bewildered. My oldest brother whispered something I couldn't quite hear. We waited there for another hour, still in shock, before deciding to head back. As we hiked back to the cabin, my brother shared that when he ranged the creature with his rangefinder after it locked eyes with us, it had bared its teeth. They were reminiscent of a lion's or a big cat's, a true predator. We had no idea what we had just encountered. We stopped by Bob's on our way back to share our experience with him. Bob believed our story and recounted his own experience with a Native American shapeshifter that had shrieked through the woods like a mountain lion. He mentioned it had been gone for 30 years, but he believed it was the same creature we had witnessed. He cautioned us to be careful and sent us on our way, giving us a jar of his homebrew. Back at the cabin, I couldn't shake the fear. Bob's story had left me with a sense of unease about those woods. Fortunately, the rest of our stay remained uneventful, aside from a raccoon scaring my brother in the bathhouse. The memory of that mysterious creature would stay with me, a constant reminder that the woods held secrets beyond our understanding. So, if you ever find yourself in the Northern California mountains north of Cohasset and hear a shriek in the night, be very cautious. It might be the same shapeshifter we encountered. Every year, my closest friend Dane and I visit his grandparents at their cabin in a tranquil, small town nestled in the North Georgia mountains. All three of us share a deep love for the outdoors, and we're always on the lookout for exciting activities in the area. One memorable night, the three of us decided to embark on a night hike along a trail not far from the cabin. It's worth noting that this wasn't your typical hiking trail. It was more of a gravel dirt road used by hunters, campers, motorbikers, and backpackers. As we approached the trailhead, we noticed an old, beat-up, and rather suspicious-looking black Chevy SUV parked near the entrance. Two middle-aged men were inside the vehicle, and this immediately raised our suspicions. While the area was generally safe, the deep woods often attracted a mix of individuals, some involved in less savory activities. Given the circumstances, we decided to steer clear of that trail and instead opted for another, about half a mile down the road. We parked our truck about 50 feet into the trail, just out of view from the road, and eagerly set off on our hike. The hike began on a positive note, with the thrill of adventure in the crisp night air. However, after hiking about a mile in, we started hearing the persistent barking of a dog, seemingly about 300 feet away from us. Uncertainty crept in as we debated whether the dog was on a leash or if it posed any threat to us. Our worries escalated, and we eventually decided to turn back. As we retraced our steps, about 1,000 feet away from our truck, we were stunned to see a car parked behind my friend's grandpa's truck. The car's engine was running, and its headlights were on. This was an alarming sight, as it was late at night, and the trailhead was not visible from the road. Someone would have had to venture into the trail to discover our parked truck. We stood still for about 5 minutes, attempting to discern any signs of activity around the car. Due to the darkness and distance, we struggled to see clearly. Fortunately, we found shelter behind a sizable tree right next to the trail, ensuring we remained hidden from whoever was in the car. My friend's grandpa retrieved the night vision binoculars we had brought along to gain a better view, but the situation remained obscure. We decided to wait, hoping that the car's occupants would soon depart, as we had no intention of returning to our truck with this mysterious vehicle lurking nearby. After approximately 10 tense minutes, the car unexpectedly circled around the truck and started heading down the trail, directly toward our location. We acted swiftly, scaling a nearby hill and concealing ourselves behind a fallen log at its summit. Within moments, the same battered black Chevy SUV that had raised our suspicions earlier on the alternate trail cruised past our previous position. The car's windows were down, and it slowed as it passed us. Fear coursed through us, hearts pounding relentlessly. We dreaded the idea that these individuals might stop, search for us, or, even worse, confront us. Thankfully, the car continued without stopping, vanishing from our view. Once it was out of sight, we emerged from our hiding spot and raced back to the truck, wasting no time in departing from that eerie encounter. While the situation might not be as terrifying as some others, it was certainly a frightening experience for us. We can only speculate about the motives of those individuals in the car. It's possible they had something hidden deeper in the woods and believed we had stumbled upon it, but we'll never know for sure. Many things could have gone wrong, and we were grateful that they didn't. If we had arrived at the trail just a few seconds later, the outcome might have been entirely different, and we could have found ourselves in a precarious situation.